Hi there everyone, Melissa here with the Sunshine Planner, and I have decided today to try something that I haven't tried. Well, actually, that's a lie. I tried it one time and it turned out terrible. I didn't like it. I am going to make some butternut squash soup today. And I've tried to order it at restaurants a couple different times, and every time I order, they're out. They're already sold out, and I've never had any. And I tried to, like I said, make it one other time before, and it didn't turn out very well. So I'm going to try a different recipe today, and today's recipe is coming from Skinny Taste. And it actually is titled Cinnamon Roasted Butternut Squash. And today is kind of a gloomy day here in Battle Creek, Michigan. So I thought today would be a good day to try it. So here we go. This recipe calls for 40 ounces of butternut squash, and I don't quite have 40 ounces. I think I have about 32. I put it on the scale and it's about 32 ounces. So I'm going to cut down some of my ingredients by a quarter. I think that should do it. So first thing it is asking me to do is to cut up my butternut squash, and I'm actually going to cut it up kind of small because I have to bake it in the oven, and it has to, I think it takes about almost an hour to cook. So I guess if I cut it smaller, then it'll probably cook faster. So I think that's what I'm going to try. I'm wondering how many of you out there like butternut squash soup. Like I said, I have wanted to try it for a long time. Every time I do, it's out, so I've not been able to try it. So I am going to try to cook it myself. I've got all the butternut squash cut up and chopped up into little chunks, and the next part of the recipe calls for nutmeg and cinnamon. So I'm gonna go ahead, and I've got my cinnamon already. Calls for 3/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm not quite using the whole 3/4 because, like I said before, I'm about 8 ounces shy of 40 ounces of what the recipe calls for. So it's okay. Or if you like it cinnamony, then you can use it all. So what the heck, we'll use it all. And then it calls for the same amount of nutmeg, and I'm using fresh nutmeg that I can grate with my grater. I prefer to use that. So I'm just going to sprinkle it over. Calls for about 3/4. I don't know, I'm not gonna measure this. I'm just gonna kind of sprinkle it. And that's good. And then the recipe doesn't call for this, but I am actually going to put a little basil infused olive oil on it. Just drizzle it right over. You can use no flavor or a flavored. I love cooking with infused oils, so I use that a lot. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the oven at 350 for about 40 minutes. Okay, so the butternut squash is done out of the oven. Smell-o-vision, sorry, it smells amazing. So now I'm gonna go ahead and put my coconut flakes into the oven so they can get toasted. I just need to do that for about 5 or 6 minutes, and I'm gonna set my timer for 5 minutes and then I'll keep an eye on it. But we're gonna go ahead and go to the next step. So this is what it says. Like I said, this is real life cooking here, you guys. I've never made this before, so I'm reading this step by step as if you did, if you were home doing it yourself. So it said, spread the coconut on the baking sheet and toast in the oven, stirring every 2 minutes. So I'll be doing that until golden, 6 to 8 minutes, let cool. Heat a large non-stick pot over medium heat. Add the coconut oil and shallots and cook. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the oven on, or my stove top on. I guess I'll start it at medium. That's where I'll start it. And I'm going to add the coconut oil and the shallots. So it called for 1 tablespoon of coconut oil, which is very thick, so it's not gonna wanna come out. So I'm gonna get a little spatula here. And there we go. So I'll give that a second to heat up, the oil to do its thing. So these are going now, sauteing pretty good here. And there's my timer, so I'm gonna check this again. And they're starting to toast. If you could see this, they're starting to get just a little bit brown. I'm gonna toss them again. Spread them thin. Put that back in. And then stir these some more. When these are done simmering, we're going to add the butternut squash and the liquids and start immersing everything. These shallots smell pretty good themselves. Just a couple more minutes and those should be done. Okay, so these look like they're pretty done. I think they're pretty done. So I'm gonna start adding the other ingredients. I have 2 1/4 cups of vegetable broth. I have 1 cup of coconut milk. It called for light. I went with unsweetened. And then an additional 2 tablespoons. So I have that kind of in a separate container over here. So I'm gonna go ahead and add this. It's not that hot, so I can kind of touch it. So I'm gonna go ahead and add this. I love these stones. They're Pampered Chef. I don't know how many. It's pretty popular, I think. But I love them. They clean up really nice, and there's a lot of yummy goodness on that. So I have that. Here's my 2 1/4 cups of broth. Vegetable broth specifically. This is my 1 cup of coconut milk. Called for light, like I said. I went with unsweetened. So this needs to come to a simmer for 5 minutes. That's perfect. Let that cool. It's been simmering for about 5 minutes and things are kind of starting to get a little mushy in there, which is, I think, is a good sign. I'm going to, I don't have a food processor. I would typically maybe use a food processor or a Vitamix. I used to have a food processor and it broke on me a couple times, the same brand. I'm not gonna say what brand it was, same problem both times. So currently I'm in between, but I would use a Vitamix probably to do this. I'm gonna try this little attachment. I've never used it before and I think this might be a good example of what it's supposed to be for, and you're supposed to, it's just supposed to merge everything together, kind of blend it up. Let's see if it works for that. I don't see that working. Yeah. I think my 2 attachments, my traditional attachments, might do a better job. So here's what I'm gonna do. This real life cooking, folks. I do handle it and then put it back in the pot and then I'll come back. All right, you guys, this is funny because real life cooking has a lot of twists and turns to it. So I did, my NutriBullet was very successful. This is the size that I used for this batch of soup. It took 3 of these to blend to blend my butternut squash soup. And so I just wanted to let you know that if you ran into the same situation that I did. So I'm gonna go ahead and, this is the bowl that I used to put it in after I used my NutriBullet each time. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this back in the pan. It's perfect, actually. And remember the last batch I made of soup, which was not this recipe, and I think I just got the recipe off of Pinterest. It sounded good, but for whatever reason, it wasn't really good. Now, if you look at this, it's too thick for a soup. And it does talk about that in the recipe, that at the end, you may need to add some more vegetable broth to kind of loosen it up a little bit, because it's actually quite thick. I will tell you that I did a little tasting and it tastes really good. So I'm already pleased with this recipe. So I'm gonna grab my vegetable broth and I'm just gonna kind of pour in until I get the consistency that I'm looking for in a soup. And this, they just said you might need to add more. They didn't say how much, so I'm doing it. The other thing I might want to mention, this is a brand new recipe. I've never tried it before. I typically add a lot of herbs and seasonings in everything that I do. It's just what I do. I just throw it in. I don't even measure. This particular recipe didn't call for any of that. So when it's all done, I'm going to wonder if I would have wanted to add some things. Well, the first time I make a recipe, I make it to a T, and then I change it as I go. And it doesn't make it in my recipe box unless it's a fan for my husband, unless he loves it. I love it. And if I've made changes in order for that to happen, I don't want to put it in my recipe box until I've tweaked that original recipe to our liking. So I'm still adding. So far, I want to tell you I've probably added about a cup of extra vegetable broth. And this is the consistency it's at right now. It's still pretty thick. I think I'm just going to add the rest of this, which is maybe about another half a cup. And I think that'll do it. So I'm going to turn this back on. I'm going to let it simmer, bring it to another simmer, which shouldn't take that long because it's pretty hot. And I like that consistency when I just threw in that last little bit amount, about half a cup. So I probably added about another cup and a half of vegetable broth to get it to the consistency that I'm looking for. See, so now it's a soupy, more of a soupy kind of. And so what I am gonna do is I am just going to throw in a little salt and a little pepper, and maybe, and these are the three ingredients of seasonings that I keep handy: garlic salt, pepper, and regular kosher salt. And I'm just going to throw that in because I think it's definitely going to need that. So I'm going to let that simmer, and then I will pour it in the bowls and we'll give it a try. Unsweetened. Like that. I thought I would need to use this to kind of twirl it around, but I don't. So then I'm going to add a couple, I'm supposed to add about a tablespoon of these. And so I'll do that. Okay, JC, are you ready to try this?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So I'll go ahead and try it. And then we'll let JC, you can go ahead and try yours.
Ladies first.
Let's give this a whirl. It looks delicious. So good, you guys. This is like night and day from the last recipe. I was really turned off from even trying this until I came across this particular recipe. This is so good, you guys. If you like butternut squash, oh my gosh. This is fantastic. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna add this to my meal planning that I've already done this week. I'm just gonna add it to like a meal that I already have planned as like a side. So I'm gonna do that. Oh my gosh. So JC, you try it.
It's amazing, I gotta say. I mean, the presentation is just phenomenal.
What do you think?
It's just amazing. It's so refreshing. So many flavors. I could just literally drink this whole bowl in like 2 seconds.
I've never made a soup that tastes so good. It's so good. If you really liked what you saw today, I would really appreciate it if you would share the love by liking or commenting and or sharing my page channel, the Sunshine Planner channel. And God bless.